Every year in the United Kingdom, about 150,000 people have a stroke, so big numbers. And as you would know, suffering a stroke isn't a mild illness. It can be completely fatal, and people can have a range of disabilities in between. What we do know, about 67,000 people do die every year of stroke, and it presents about 9% of deaths in men, and in women about 13%. So to some extent, whatever we do, we know that a lot of people will die from a stroke. But actually what we really know is that we can make lives of people that have stroke much, much better if we get our services better aligned and slicker. We know that the older you get, the chances of having a stroke increases. So once you pass 55, every decade your chance of getting a stroke increases. So to some extent it is a disease of older age, but we also know that many young people can get strokes too. So it's not just a disease of old age, but because it's linked to your heart and your blood vessels, as they age and we all age, the chances of getting a stroke become higher. And it is the second largest cause of long-term disability, which is why it's really important that we try wherever possible to cure a stroke, but where people do have some disability from it, to make sure that we can minimise the disability and make sure that people live as active and an independent life as possible. But people will very often have some degree of disability to live with. Okay, so within hospital, stroke care and patients that have had a stroke occupy up to about 20% of the inpatient beds in hospitals. Now, it's not a fifth of all of our hospital beds that have somebody who's just had a stroke, but you might have had a new stroke, but you might go into hospital with some other illness and also have perhaps a past history of having a stroke as well. So a lot of people in hospitals will have a stroke either as the reason they're presenting now, or perhaps going in with a chest infection or a broken leg or something and have had a stroke previously. And we know that looking after people from stroke costs an awful lot of money. About £2.8 billion is spent in the NHS on treating stroke. Numbers that are too big to think about actually, but all he says is we're spending an awful lot of money trying to look after people who have had a stroke. And we know that your chances of dying increase between, it says, 14 and 25% if you go to a general stroke ward rather than a stroke unit. And this is really one thing that is key to the way that we're looking at developing our stroke services. We know that if we can get you into a ward, a stroke unit, that has staff that are very skilled in looking after people with stroke, that your chances of surviving are higher, but your chances of having reduced disability are also heightened. So you will have better care if we can get you onto a purpose-built stroke unit. And this is something that in the past we didn't always have. I guess some of you will perhaps think I didn't go to a stroke unit, and we didn't always have them in years gone by. But we know that if we're looking at planning our services and giving the best care that we can to the residents of Cardiff Vale, we need to make good use of the stroke units and try wherever possible to make sure that people who've had a stroke get there as rapidly as they can, so that you don't go on to a surgical ward or a general medical ward, and that you don't spend too long in the casualty department. Now, before 2007, had many of you been in touch with the services before 2007? I guess a few, yeah. Before 2007, stroke wasn't really recognised to be a medical emergency. And with the Stroke Association here, one of the keys that we're trying to get the general population to understand is people understand what heart attack is. We'd like to think of stroke as a brain attack, because it's very much the same sort of thing. You either have a clot within a vessel in the brain or a bleed within a vessel in the brain. Heart attacks have been around for a long time, and people have understood that you need to get to a cardiac unit very quickly. So we now recognise that stroke is a medical emergency, but it wasn't recognised quite so much back before 2007. And I guess there was little progress made in the late 1990s. If you're a younger person that has a stroke, it can be very, very challenging. You may need to return to work, you may have family to look after, and it impacts in different ways. Actually, you also have to live with a stroke for many more years. So it's really important that we look specifically at the needs of the younger stroke patients. So any help that we could give you with your support, I would be very welcome to do, because we know it's a weakness for all of the stroke services, but because it's a disease of older people, if we can get it right for older people to start with, we need to use the learning from that to look at what we can do for younger people.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Thank you.